Christian, we're about an hour's drive from the Russian border here in Kharkiv, and over the last few weeks, Ukrainian forces have managed to push the Russians right outside the city limits here, further north. As we speak, they are working their way through the network of towns and villages to the north of the city, trying to clear Russians out as they go. Now, the significance of that advance, if it continues in the way it is that the Ukrainians could cut off a vital Russian supply line. As far as the Russians are concerned, much of their firepower is now becoming more and more concentrated in the Donbass south of here. And that speaks to, I guess, a broader theme of this war, which is ever diminishing Russian ambition when it comes to the military campaign. And that is why what happened in Mariupol overnight is so important when it comes to the Russian narrative. Everything about the siege of Azovstal packed with symbolism, including the beginning of the end. Soldiers on stretchers in procession through scorched earth. Footage released by pro-Russian separatists purports to show some of the wounded who'd been holed up in Mariupol steelworks for months. Late on Monday, the Ukrainian forces that occupied it ordered by President Zelenskyy to leave the last remaining stronghold in the southern port city. More than 50 of the most severely wounded were transferred to a hospital in a nearby town. Those who could walk out themselves were sent to another, both towns controlled by Russian-backed separatists. The Russians say it's surrender. The Ukrainians insist that this is the start of a prisoner swap. The far-right roots of the Azov Battalion, long subsumed into the regular Ukrainian army, was used by the Russians to justify the invasion in the first place. This could make an exchange a harder sell politically in Moscow. And already Russian lawmakers are ratcheting up the rhetoric to something approaching fever pitch.
If we exchange a sufficiently large number of prisoners of war from the Ukrainian side for these non-humans in human form, and show the world that they are worthy only of capital punishment, they don't deserve to live after those monstrous crimes against humanity.
Papa, save Azov! Papa, save Azov!
The wives of the soldiers inside had begged the Ukrainian president to save their husbands.
Yesterday we heard about 60 wounded people were evacuated and roughly 200 were taken to occupied territory. What will happen to the boys? You know how Russia treats Azov people. Actually, they don't care if it's Azov, the police, or the armed forces.
And this from the Ukrainian president himself, a carefully worded message, a demonstration of the tightrope he is walking here by way of a deal.
I want to stress that Ukraine needs Ukrainian heroes alive. That's our principle. I think that any reasonable person will understand these words. The operation to save the defenders of Mariupol has been started by our military intelligence. The work continues to return guys home, and this work requires delicacy and time.
Success in Mariupol for the Russians, the final link in the chain, a land bridge between Russia and Crimea. But underneath the bridge, the corpses. Local politicians, now exiled from the city, say those who remain are being asked to sign statements saying their homes were destroyed by Ukrainian forces if they want any compensation. And while Ukraine's exit from Azovstal is a coup for Russia, its forces are making limited headway elsewhere, particularly in the Donbass. UK intelligence reported that President Putin has taken to micromanaging the campaign. And yesterday, in an extraordinary move, a Russian military analyst and retired general told Russian state TV that the war saw no good outcome for Russia. The significance or otherwise of perceived changes of tone or messaging from Russia, difficult runes to read, especially against the backdrop of Mariupol now, once upon a time recognizable as a city.
Horror O'Brien in Ukraine. Well, a short time ago I spoke to Andrei Kortunov. He sits on a panel of foreign policy experts that advise the Kremlin and is also Director General of the Russian International Affairs Council, a think tank based in Moscow. And I began by asking him how the developments in Mariupol were being seen in Russia.
Well, I think it is perceived as a significant military victory for Russia. And definitely Mariupol has been a pain in the neck for quite a long time. And I think that the perception is that finally this mission is accomplished and Russia can continue getting control of the territory of the former Donetsk and Lugansk regions of Ukraine.
Is this starting to feel quite clearly now that the military objectives that Russia started with have not been achieved?
Well, it's clear that the objectives in full have not been achieved, and that's exactly why the Russian leadership continues the operation. However, there are also hopes that probably right now the Russian leadership can declare victory and get back to the negotiating table, because for the time being, it seems that the negotiations between the two sides are stalled, and we don't see any progress in this process at all.
Now that there are so many thousand Russian soldiers dead, are the families of those soldiers saying anything about how they feel about what's going on in Ukraine?
Well, we don't know because definitely the information is controlled by state media, and these people are supposed to have served their country. We should also keep in mind that these are not conscripts, that these are people who served on the contract basis. So that makes a difference. But speaking of the public opinion polls, the approval ranking of President Putin remains high, but apparently it has reached its peak, and probably it will start go down if this operation continues for too long.
Can you explain why it's high when so many things have gone wrong?
Well, first of all, I think it's a natural rallying around the flag phenomenon. It is typical for any country which has a situation like what we have right now. Second, I think that the overall perception is that, and this perception is generated by the state media, is that Russia is doing the right thing, that Russia is defending itself.
Thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of Russian soldiers are dead. Russia's war aims have not been achieved. NATO has been strengthened, and the rest of the world has been united. I mean, are any Russians starting to see this as a diplomatic and geopolitical disaster?
Well, of course, there is a political opposition in Russia, but the opposition is quite fragmented, and some liberal media were shut down, and many people left the country. I don't know the exact numbers, but definitely there are significant numbers of Russians who left the country over the last 2 or 3 months.
And is there any sense of free debate in Russia? Can people say what they think?
Well, it's hard to tell. I think that definitely there is a self-censorship, and many people prefer to keep silent. Not all of them. Some are vocal, but I think that it is more difficult right now to have a free debate than it was before the operation started, because definitely we now have to confront an entirely different environment.
Andrei Kortunov, thank you very much.
Thank you.